Business ownership is the best way to build wealth, and buying a business is the fastest way to get there. We had a follower ask about the characteristics of a business that can be run absentee. Now, we talked about the importance of the previous owner's personal relationships in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. I'm wearing the same shirt. And now, this is a highly controversial topic among experienced business owners and business brokers. There are people that adamantly swear that no business can be run absentee. We even run into a lot of brokers that won't work with potential buyers that are planning to run the business in an absentee or semi-absentee manner. And from my experience just in life is that the extreme answer is wrong 99% of the time. So our thoughts are not every business can be run absentee, but some can. And not every owner is capable of running a business absentee, but some can. But now, to be honest, in most cases, a business is gonna run better with an owner-operator. But often the question is it worth the extra effort, or are you better off devoting your time to other things? So yes, that business could be run a little bit better. Your revenue would be a little bit higher and your margins would be a little bit better. But if you were focusing that energy on something else instead of working day to day in the business, does the value that you are adding in that other venture exceed the value lost by not operating that business? And in many cases, the answer to that is yes. And just for example, generally when we work with clients that are gonna be absentee, it's gonna be really difficult for them to come in and say back up the general manager. We typically suggest putting an assistant manager or someone in place that's somewhat of a redundancy in normal environment, but you have a backup. So if something goes wrong, they're there. If the manager were to leave or get sick, you have someone that's ready immediately to step into that role. Now, almost by definition, that is an inefficient business structure because you have an employee there that the business really doesn't need, but they are just there to give you some excess capacity, some margin of safety. So when we talk about, some business owners would say that that's just a really terrible way to do it and it's wasteful, and that's fine, that's their opinion. It's just kind of how you look at the world. Sometimes something that can reduce your stress is worth spending money on. And if you have a good manager, pay them. Pay them well. Make sure you set up a good bonus structure so that they're incentivized to think like an owner in a way. So give them targets if they can hit certain revenue growth, if they can hit certain expense targets. Make sure they're targets that they can control in some way, but give them ownership of the experience, and you can get a lot of the benefits that you would get from an owner-operator in that structure. And again, you're running the business at a lower margin than you necessarily have to. Maybe you're paying someone more than the minimum for that role, but that person is crucial, and if they leave, it would really hurt your business. So again, it's worth spending the extra money for a little bit more extra peace of mind. Make sure that they feel well treated and well compensated. So now this is more art than science, but here's some things that we would look for a business that can possibly be run absentee. The easiest is one that's already run absentee. This is your best sign, assuming the business is already doing well in the structure. So you want to make sure that you're not buying a business that's currently run absentee that maybe has been suffering because it's not being run absentee well. So it's possible that that's a sign that maybe this business didn't have the characteristics needed to be run absentee and someone's doing it anyway, and that's leading to a decline in revenue. So you want to look for a business that is doing well under an absentee owner. We really like businesses with a strong number two, someone that is immediately ready to step into the leadership role. It's the natural progression in their career. So you can come in, you give them a nice promotion, you give them a nice pay increase, you get to build a really good relationship with them. I think you always have a better relationship with someone that you've hired or someone that you've promoted versus inheriting someone in that role already. And we also look for businesses that are relatively simple and do not require some highly specialized skill that we do not have. So obviously it's really easy, things like, a doctor, a lawyer, or a CPA. I'm none of those things, so those types of companies probably don't work well for me or most people that we work with. If you look at something like an architecture company, or even sometimes you see in the electrical industry, there might be businesses where typically the owner is some type of engineer and they go out and they bid contracts and they go and find union workers to actually do the work. I feel like that's a pretty specialized skill as well, that it's probably more difficult to find someone that is willing to work for you with that particular skill set. You can't just step in if you wanted to be an operator if you don't have that skill. So really looking at things that require a very highly specialized skill set typically turn us away. And here's the big one. The business needs to generate enough revenue that it can support a management structure. A business has to reach a certain scale before it can be run absentee. Really, anything can be run absentee if it has the right scale. Look at any public company. That's essentially an absentee ownership structure. You go and buy stock and you have a management company. Even the most complex companies in the world can be run absentee once they reach scale. So taking that down to a smaller level, every business kind of has that break point where it has enough revenue that it can support a full management structure. And it's going to vary by industry because the costs are going to vary pretty widely across industry, and what you need and the margins are going to be different. So whenever we evaluate something we're looking at buying and we know there's going to be an absentee situation, you go in, you add the expense, so maybe you add $100,000 for a manager, and then make sure that the cash flow is still enough to be worth your time and effort to buy the business. Now, everyone is going to have a different style of running a business absentee. Some owners may have a daily call with their managers. Some owners may check in weekly. I'd say daily's probably a little overkill, but you do want to check in with the business pretty frequently. But there should be a consistent line of communication between you and the owner and the day-to-day general manager. You want to hear about issues that are popping up early before they become much bigger problems. So the better your communications with your management team, the better the business is going to run. So absentee is not set it and forget it. A neglected business will not survive. It's just really demotivating to your employees to feel neglected by the owner. So if they haven't heard from you in 3 months, they're not just not going to work as hard. They're going to feel like you don't care. Versus if you actually have a relationship with the people in that business, they're always going to do a better job for you. And last point on this topic. So even as an absentee owner, I think it's important to do things with your frontline employees every now and then. A huge mistake I see across all levels of management, whether it's a small business owner, an executive at a large company, really all across the board, is that people don't spend time with their employees. I think an example is they think they're doing a great thing by, say, buying everyone lunch once a quarter, but they don't show up to the lunch. So I think you lose all the goodwill. You just spent the money, but you didn't really get much. Everyone loves a free lunch. No one's going to complain about a free lunch, but no one's going to stay in a job because they gave them a free lunch every once in a while. What they'll do is they'll stay because you bought lunch, you sat there, you ate with them, you talked to them, you learned about them, you learned about what's going on in their lives, their day-to-day. Different ways you can improve the business will come up during those conversations as well. They'll tell you where the pain points are, and then at that moment you can say, hey, well, let's fix that. So to the no business can be run absentee crowd, I agree. No business can survive in neglect. So running a business absentee does not mean that you don't spend any time in the business, that you don't spend any time with your employees. It just means that you're not there every day. So let us know your thoughts on the topic. Leave any questions and types of businesses you want us to cover.